Hi and welcome to another Carpenter tutoring tutorial. I'm Amy and today we are going to talk about how to solve for variables in equations that contain that variable on both sides of the equal sign. In order to do this, we have a couple example problems, so let's work our way through and see what we need to do. In general, our goal is to reformat these equations so that I have my variable on one side of the equal sign and my constant term, or the term that's just a number, on the other side of the equal sign. From there, we can take whatever steps we may need to isolate that variable completely and then find its value. So let's look at our first equation as an example. We have 6y plus 3 equals 8y minus 21. The first thing that I see is that I have my variable y in two places in this equation. I have it on the left side with 6y, and I have it on the right side with 8y. I have two options for how to resolve this. I could get the 6y off of its side and move it toward the 8y, or I could reverse that direction and I could move the 8y toward the 6y. Either of these will work out just fine. They're both going to work out mathematically, but often one direction is going to cause us to work with a positive number and the other direction might cause us to work with a negative number. Personally, I like to work with positive numbers, so I will always take whatever action I need to keep things positive. Sometimes we're not able to do that depending on the equation, but in this case, I can make that decision and choose what the outcome is going to be. So in this case, I see that if I choose to move the 6y toward the 8y, because I'm going to have to use subtraction to move that 6y over since we're starting with a positive 6y, that tells me that when I subtract 6y from the right side as well to maintain my balance, I'm still going to end up with a positive number of y over there. And that is exactly what I want. It's just what I'm more comfortable with. So I'll go ahead and make that choice and subtract 6y from both sides, which will give me 3 equals now 2y minus 21. What we've succeeded with at this point is getting our variable at just one side in our equation, but I still have constant terms in both sides. Now mathematically, again, I do have the choice to move these number terms either direction. I could move the 3 toward the negative 21, or I could move the negative 21 toward the 3, but only one of them helps us in our goal of getting variables on one side, numbers on the other. Since I see that my variable only exists on the right side at this point, that means the left side must be the location that my numbers are going to end up. So I want to move the negative 21 out of the variable side and toward the number side. Since I see that I have subtraction in front of that 21 right now, I'll go ahead and move it over by using addition. So I'll add 21 to both sides, and that will give me 24 equals 2y. Now I've gotten my equation to a point where I have numbers on one side, variables on the other, and the only thing that remains to be done is to break the relationship between 2 and y. I see that that relationship is a multiplication relationship, and so I'll break it with its opposite operation of division. So I'll divide by 2 on both sides, and that will give me 12 equals y. At this point, if I wasn't quite confident in my steps, I could plug that value of 12 back into any y's in my original equation and make sure those two sides actually do equal each other. But I'm pretty sure that I've done this work correctly, so we'll skip that step. But again, if you're doing something on a test or a quiz and you want to get as many points as possible, it's a really great idea to double check your work by plugging your value back in. But since we're confident in our answer, let's move on to our next problem. In this problem, we have negative 2 times the quantity c minus 12 equals 9c plus 2. I see that I have this issue of having my variable on both sides of the equal sign again, but I have the additional difficulty that one of those variables is trapped inside grouping symbols. So before I can start making any moves to try to bring these variables to the same side of the equal sign, I first need to get rid of those grouping symbols. The way that I can do this is taking the negative 2 that's outside those grouping symbols right now and distributing it into all terms that are inside the grouping symbols. So once I do this, I can rewrite my equation as negative 2c plus 24 equals 9c plus 2. Now I can start to think about what I can do to bring my c's together in a way that will keep a positive value for me to work with, a positive coefficient. I have a choice of bringing the negative 2c to the 9c, or of bringing the 9c to the negative 2c. If I move the negative 2c over to the 9c, then that's going to keep me positive, so that is the direction that I will choose. Since I have a negative sign in front of the 2c, I'll move that 2c over to the other side with the opposite sign, so addition in this case, and I'll end up adding 2c to both sides, which will give me 24 equals 11c plus 2. Now, once again, I've gotten to a place where I have my variable just on one side of the equation, but I've got my constant terms on both sides. So in order to further our goal of getting variables on one side, constants on the other, or plain numbers on the other, I'm going to have to move this 2 over toward the 24. Since I have addition in front of that 2 right now, I will move it over with the opposite operation of subtraction. And once I simplify that subtraction on both sides, I'll get 22 equals 11c. Finally, I need to break the relationship between 11 and c to get that variable completely on its own. I recognize that this is a multiplication relationship, so I will break that multiplication relationship with division, dividing by the coefficient that we want to get rid of. And once I divide on both sides, I'll get that 2 equals c. Once again, from this point, if I wanted to double check my work, especially on a quiz or a test, I would plug that value of 2 back in for any c's in my original equation and make sure that it turns out correctly. As you could hopefully see from these examples, our main goal here is to get variables on one side of the equal sign, numbers on the other, and doing it in such a way that you work with the numbers you're most comfortable with, which tend to be positive values. We could have made opposite decisions in these problems and still gotten to our answers, but if you're more likely to make a mistake working with a negative value than you are a positive value, well, you want to choose the way that you're more likely to be successful with. And so that's why we made the choices that we did in these problems. I hope it's been helpful to walk through a couple examples of solving for variables in equations that contain variables on both sides of the equal sign together. If you have any questions or other topics that you'd like to see discussed, please let me know in the comments. If you enjoy our content, I hope you'll consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Thanks so much for spending part of your day with me, and I'll catch you next time.